for weeks and weeks and weeks. I can say months and months and months. We've been talking about John 15. And John, last week we started a discussion on pruning. And John 15:2, Jesus says, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch in me that does bear fruit, he prunes so that we'll bear more fruit. So everybody in this room, we're all fruit bearers. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. We are all fruit bearers. And we're fruit bearers who love God and who want to do it for God. And if you are a fruit bearer, which I believe you all are, it means that you're going to be pruned, because that's what Jesus says. And you're going to be pruned by the vine dresser, which is God. We talked last week a little bit about our gardens and how important it is to do the pruning, because the pruning makes the plant healthier and also makes the fruit healthier. And we also need to be pruned ourselves, because it makes our spiritual life healthier and it makes us bear healthy fruit. We talked a bit last week about one of the ways that God prunes us is to bring that when they prune the vines in a real vineyard, they get all the excess out so that it can get light. And God brings light into our lives to expose things that are hidden in the darkness, things that we don't want other people to know about, that he longs to bring to the surface. And pruning is designed to help us to bear healthy fruit in our life and to become more Christ-like. So if we have something, we talked about if we have something hiding, whatever it is, that we need to allow the vine dresser to shine his light in that shadowy place and choose others to help you with the walk. Last week we talked about how I asked the question about think about the most important thing in your life. What's the most important thing in your life? And if Jesus physically showed up in front of you right now and said, I want you to lay it down. I want it. Could you turn around and walk away from it for the rest of your life, even if you never knew why? Could you do it? And if you couldn't, kind of like me, I'm thinking, I have this thought of like my husband or my children. My first reaction is, why would he want me to do that? How could I do that? I mean, I have this almost a panicky feeling to it. And if we cannot surrender to Jesus in that moment, then he's less important to us than whatever it is that he has asked us to lay down. And I find this to be incredibly challenging. We talked a little bit last week about Abraham, and after his long-awaited child, God says, okay, now I want you to take him and sacrifice him. And I'm sure he didn't say it quite like that. But like Abraham, here's what we need to remember. Just because we are willing to lay something down doesn't mean he's going to take it away from us. He wants to be the priority in our life. And that's what he was showing Abraham and showing the people who hold Abraham up as the father of the nations, right? Sin wants to remain unknown. Darkness is the enemy's playground, and in darkness, sin will poison the whole person. Last week we talked a little bit about how God designed the church to help us in this walk. We weren't meant to do this alone. We can't do it alone. We can't, even if we try. That we are branches. We are branches on the vine of Christ. And think about a grapevine with one branch. Not only would it look pretty silly, it wouldn't be very productive. We all need each other. So that's kind of a bit of a sum up of last week. But pruning is not just about getting rid of hidden sin. I mean, part of it is hidden sin, but I believe that pruning is any difficulty, any problem that comes into our life. It could be caused by our own sins, but it could be caused by somebody else's sins. It could be a difficulty in a relationship, in our family, in a marriage. It could be loss or grief, disappointment, hopelessness. It could be being confronted by our sin. It could be that just the circumstance is unfair. I mean, I think any difficulty in our life, God will use to prune us. The point is that bad things happen to everybody. I don't know anybody on this planet that hasn't had something bad happen to him. Jesus said as Christians that bad things are going to happen. Remember? He says, if you're going to follow me, you're going to be persecuted. And we have an enemy out there that hates us. He hates us. And we also live in a fallen world. And we make mistakes. And the people around us make mistakes. And God uses all of the difficulties, all of the problems, all of the bad things to prune us. He uses those things to prune us. Now, we just have to figure out how we're supposed to respond. We know it's going to happen. We just need to learn how we're supposed to respond. And I think sometimes that's the most difficult part. We talked several weeks ago about Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas were beaten very unjustly and thrown into prison. And what was their response? Say it again. Singing and praising God. Incredible. So I want to present another account in Scripture that where they had a little bit of a different response. And we're going to read from Mark 4 and starting in verse 35. Jesus had been with his disciples, the 12, all day long, teaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And he tells his disciples, let's get in a boat. We're going to cross over to the other side. So on verse 35, on that day, when evening had come, Jesus said to them, let's go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took with them in the boat, just as he was. They took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and there were other boats with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. So we need to remember that several of these disciples were experienced fishermen, right? They were very accustomed to storms. And while they were crossing, this violent storm arose that says the boat was starting to fill with water. And in verse 38, it says, but Jesus was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. So if Jesus was in the stern, he was most likely the one that was supposed to be steering the boat. But it says they found him asleep. It says they found him asleep on the cushion. That's the helmsman's cushion where he's supposed to be sitting and steering the boat. They awoke him and they said, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? He awoke, he rebuked the wind, and he said, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? So we know this was a terrible storm. We know it was terrible because these were experienced fishermen and they were scared, right? And they found Jesus asleep and they yelled up, wake up, wake up. They're really terrified. And in the middle of it all, in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the trying to wake him up, they ask him, to me, one of the most astonishing questions. Lord, don't you care that we're perishing? Think about that. Is there anybody on the planet that would care more that they or anybody else was perishing? So the difference between these two accounts, and we talked about Paul and Silas a few weeks ago, but the difference between these accounts, the disciples in the boat and Paul and Silas, has it very extremely different. And it's kind of staggering when you think about it. Jesus was physically in the boat with them, the 12, physically. And what was their response? Terrified, right? Lots of anxiety and fear, right? They were terrified. Jesus said, why are you so afraid? Have you no faith? Still no faith? He said they were filled with such great fear that they said, Who is this? Who is this that even the winds obey? Now, Jesus was with them physically, but somehow they still didn't know him, and they still didn't understand who he was, and there was something very wrong with their relationship. Paul and Silas, on the other hand, they were faced with this horrific, unjust beating and thrown into prison. Their life was, it sure is gone. And even though Jesus was not with them physically, they knew that Jesus was with them. And their response was what, Josephine? Singing and praises to God. Their response was trust and worship. So freedom from this bitter tasting fruit of persecution was a direct consequence of their worship in the middle of it. So remember how in that account, as they're singing and praying, the chains fell off? And then people were brought to salvation because of it, right? Sorry about all that. I don't know how to turn that off. I think that one of the big differences between these two stories is that Paul and Silas, they knew Jesus. They knew him. They were abiding in his care, and they knew he was with them even though they couldn't see him. He wasn't there physically. They had a relationship with him. They trusted God with the fruit, with the outcome of their lives. They weren't worried. They trusted God with the fruit. And one of the goals in following Christ should be for us to allow our fear and our anxiety to be transformed into trust and worship. We should go from, I'm going to die, to, I'm going to worship. That's what we need to do. We need to transition. And we do that by abiding in Christ, spending time with him, learning who he is, and getting to know our Father and developing that trust. So we need to ask ourselves, do I trust God? It's easier to say than it is to live it, isn't it? Pruning is about either allowing God to, pruning is about God either allowing difficulties to come into our life or bringing difficulties into our life. He does it to teach us, to train us, and to grow us. What do we usually do when a difficulty comes into our life? What's the first thing we want to do when a difficulty comes? Groan. Yeah, we should pray. Groan, whine, pity party. Try to fix it ourselves. Oh my goodness, that's so, yeah, that's, I do that. Complain, pity ourselves, get depressed, get angry at God. We have a lot of different things we do. Too often we run away when God is trying to prune us, and he's doing something he wants us to grow through. This morning I was thinking about this, and I thought we could go through all of the different people in the Bible and look at their reactions. And I think about Elijah right after he was with you remember that incredible victory with the prophets of Baal, the fire that came and ate the altar, or consumed the altar. And the next day he heard Jezebel wanted to kill him, and he was running for his life, feeling sorry for himself, and just take my life. I'm just the only one. I mean, he was having the biggest pity party, wasn't he? But we also know that God was very gentle with him, very gentle. David said, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. David had learned that God was there with him. He says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And I was reading this morning, and I'm like, rod and staff. Rod and staff is there for lots of different things. It's there to guide, but it's also there to discipline. So he had accepted God's pruning. I think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I mean, you could just go on and on and on, the different people and how they responded to God's pruning. But too often we want to run from the things that God wants us to grow through. He prunes us and we push it away and go, no, we just want out of it as fast as we can. We just have to remember that this is not a punishment. He prunes those who are producing fruit. He prunes them so that they'll produce more fruit. This is not a punishment. It's to help us to grow and become who we were meant to be. Look how different Paul and Silas's account would have turned. It would have been a very different account if they had tried to take it all into their own hands and push away God's pruning. Can you imagine? I mean, the people wouldn't have been saved, right? They probably would have jumped up and ran out the door when the chains fell off. I mean, things would have been very different, but the jailer and his household would not have become Christians. Fruit is God's business. It's not ours. So if you find yourself in the middle of a difficult situation where the circumstances are not changing, this is for me. God is likely attempting to change you rather than the circumstances. That one just stepped all over my toes. If you find yourself in a difficult circumstance or difficult circumstances, and the circumstances are not changing, God is likely attempting to change you rather than your circumstances. There are people out there who say, well, I trust in God because he would never put me in a situation that I mean, he's not going to give me more than I can handle. I would say that I just wouldn't be so sure about that. We say that often. And I think we're referring to the verse in 1 Corinthians 10:13 that God says he will not allow us to be tempted beyond what we can bear. But he regularly allows us to be put into situations which are beyond what we can handle, even situations that break us. Why? So that we can learn to trust in his faithfulness and not our own abilities. Back to my and also the thought that our ability is limited and his is not. Back to my favorite verse. I know I've brought this up a lot, but 2 Corinthians 12:9, it says that God's power is perfected in our weakness. And I was telling Dora today, I cling to that verse. I cling to that verse. Paul said, God said to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power will rest on me. If we allow God to use his great power in our weaknesses, Paul is the one who wrote this verse. Paul and Silas were the ones that were in prison singing, right? He knew and he understood this. Sometimes we just think we have to have it all together. We have to have it all figured out and all together for God to be pleased with us. That is not so. In Matthew chapter 11, starting with verse 28, Jesus said, learn from me. He says, learn from me because I'm gentle and humble at heart. He says, come to me. You come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I'm gentle and I'm humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He wants us to lean in on him. That's all part of the abiding. And stop trying to figure it all out ourselves. Kind of like if you think about the disciples in the boat. I'm sure they were bailing and doing everything, trying to figure it out themselves. They had Jesus with them in person. And they were going, don't you even care? Don't you even care? We're dying. Lean on me. Learn from me. Do we want to learn from him? Do you ever ask him, teach me, show me? I have, and I would consider that a very dangerous prayer because I know that when I've said, show me, I don't get this, he's taken me through some of the most difficult things of my life. Do we want him to transform our hearts? I think we all do. I think we all say, yes, yes, yes. Do you ever ask him, give me a heart like yours. He says, I have a gentle, humble heart. We don't learn humility by reading spiritual books and listening to good sermons. We don't. We learn humility through humiliation. It's painful. It's a painful pruning. So what is humility? Humility is the stark realization and acceptance of the fact that I'm totally dependent on God. I'm dependent on His love. I'm dependent on His mercy. And humility grows in us through stripping away of all self-sufficiency. I think self-sufficiency is what gets me in trouble. I think self-sufficiency is what gets most of us in trouble. We are to be totally dependent on God. And I have been in this place. Oh, it was after I prayed that prayer about show me and change me that I went through a stripping that was excruciating. And I knew it was from God. I knew it was. Sometimes pruning is simply about bringing us to the end of ourselves, because it's at the end of ourselves where we find God. And it's at the end of ourselves that we can become the most useful to God. Got to get us out of the way. We got to get us out of the way. We got to remember that this is not about us. Some of us strive to just know, what is your will for me in my life? I want to do your will. What is your will? And it's very simple. His will is to be transformed, for us to be transformed into the likeness of Christ. That more today than yesterday, and more tomorrow than today, to continue to just look more like Christ, act more like Christ. And that transformation happens by pruning. And we think about, Dora, I was telling you I was writing notes this morning. This is one of them that came to my mind this morning. Transformed in the likeness of Christ. Do you remember what Jesus said? I don't do anything unless my Father tells me. Nothing. I do exactly what He commands me to do. I only say it if He asks me to say it. I do nothing unless my Father tells me. So when we are being transformed into the likeness of Christ, we're becoming more and more like the Father. So whatever bitter fruit that you're carrying, we all have bitter fruit. Whether it's from God or whether it's from Satan. I mean, Paul said his thorn was from Satan, right? But God says my grace is sufficient. So whatever it is that we're carrying, whether it's from God, from Satan, from another person, from yourself, because we live in a fallen world, it may seem too heavy, too painful, too much to bear. But when things get really difficult, we need to learn from Paul and Silas, don't we? Turn to worship. We just need to keep remembering God is not punishing us. He's not punishing us. He's good to us. He's helping us to become whole. He's guiding us. He's caring for us. And when we turn to worship, we thank God for the difficulty in our lives that's transforming our hearts and our life. And we change our prayer from, oh Lord, I just want to know why, to, Lord, I just want to know you. We change. That's the transition in our heart when we're in the middle of our difficulty and we're trying to figure out why things are happening and where's God and why isn't this changing. It's, I just want to know you. God's plan for our life is Christ-likeness. That's his plan. And he doesn't bring all the pain in our lives. He doesn't cause all the pain in our life, but he allows it. And, I think that We don't know how many times he stopped things that could have happened, accidents that could have happened, health issues that could have happened that didn't. I mean, we don't know any of those. All we know is what we have in front of us and what God has allowed to come through. Nope. She needs this. She needs this. What we need to remember is that his grace is way bigger than we know. And in everything that we experience in our life, if he's allowed it, then whether it's good or bad, if he's allowed it, it means that he sees that it's fit to be part of our story. My redemption, my transformation into his likeness, whatever it is that he has allowed to come into our life, whatever the pain, whatever the difficulty, whatever the circumstance, whatever it is that he says, yeah, she needs that. Then he's saying, yeah, that's going to be part of your story. That's going to be what is part of your redemption and part of what transformed you into my likeness. All of my life circumstances are for my transformation. Yours too, into wholeness and the likeness of Christ. I mean, if you think about it, that's what wholeness is. Wholeness is to become like our Maker. Wholeness is to become like Christ. That's when we know who we are. That's when we have the peace. That's when we feel settled and right, when we become like Christ and get to and know who he is. Therefore, my response to everything that happens in life, whether it be a blessing or a storm, or whether it be bitter fruit, like Paul and Silas, or good fruit, we have a lot of good fruit, should be, thank you. Thank you, Lord. I worship and I praise you. My entire life's response should be worship and gratitude, even in the tough times, especially in the tough times. Our gratitude is not meant to be saved only for the most enjoyable times. Think about that. We don't just save our gratefulness for when things are going well. Our gratitude and our gratefulness should be at all times. God wants to use everything we go through, everything, to shape us into the likeness of Christ. So here's the thing. In Hebrews chapter 5, verse 8, it says that even Jesus learned obedience through suffering. Does that make you go, huh? What? Wait a minute. It says, although he was the Son of God, he learned obedience through what he suffered. I think that is an astounding verse. That's an astounding verse. And if we are to become like Christ, we want Christ-likeness in our lives, why would we learn obedience different than he did? I think for me, well, I wrote in here this morning, so did Jesus think, oh, God must be mad at me, that's why I'm suffering? Of course not. I mean, we have got to stop thinking that way. We have got to stop thinking. That is straight from Satan. We've got to stop thinking. Whenever we're going through a difficulty, God's turned his back. He's mad at me. He's so disappointed because I didn't do this or that. We've got to stop thinking that. It is not true. It's not true. He will never, ever turn his back on us. He is there through every difficulty that we go through, even if we caused it. If we turn to him, he is there. He is there. And I think if we can just get that in our head, that will help us a tremendous amount, because we are so quick to think, he doesn't care anymore because he's so mad at me. And that is not the truth. So think about it. I asked you earlier, do I trust Jesus? Do you trust Jesus? Do you trust him even when it appears like he's sleeping? Like he should be steering this boat, but he's asleep? Or like God's nowhere to be seen in the middle of this? Do you still trust him? Do you trust him? I know that I have a lot of changes to make. I have a lot to learn, and every lesson I've done has been, for me personally, things that I need to grow and change in. But let's remember that pruning is because he loves us. It's not a punishment. If we can accept this, Hebrews 12:6 says he disciplines the ones he loves. Think about your children. Think about your children. You don't punish them when they do something wrong or discipline them when they do something wrong because you hate them. No, we want them to have a productive, fruitful life. So we discipline them and we help them and we train them to grow. And in Hebrews says, he disciplines the ones he loves. And that pruning is a discipline. Even in the middle of whatever it is, it kind of doesn't matter. If we're in it, God allowed it to come into our lives. And our first response should be, teach me. Teach me what you want me to learn through this. Show me. Teach me. And if we don't hear an answer back, it may take a while. Believe me, I know. It could take a while for those answers to come. But it doesn't mean he's gone away. He'll continue to bring things into your life to show you. He will. We're not perfect. He knows we are not perfect. But his power is perfected in our weakness. If you just write that somewhere and carry it with you every single day and remind you that he's not disappointed. He's saying, this is a place for my power to shine because I know you can't do this and I can. This is great. And there's so much more to say, but my time is up. I'm going to just kind of sum it up by saying this. Just like fruit, pruning is also God's business. It's not our business. Abiding is our business. And when we abide, we need to decide to act in trust. We need to bring trust. We can relax and stop trying to do God's job for him because he's way better at it than we are. So the series is going to have to come to an end for a while. If you guys are okay with it, I'd like to pick it up again because I only have gotten through like the first 4 verses of John 15, and I have learned so much from it that I would like to pick it up again. There's some really wonderful stuff further on about abiding in his love and on. But for the next 3 weeks, I am going to be helping out with the children's leadership program, and so Dora, bless her wonderful heart, has agreed to come and teach the class for those weeks. On the 4th week, I think it's August 17th, we have a wonderful surprise. The children who are learning in this leadership training, the girls, not the boys, the girls are going to come in here and teach our class for us. So I'm really excited about that. In September and October, Robert and I are doing a mission trip. We're going to Albania and Greece, and he's going to do a men's retreat. He's speaking in Athens. We've already got things set up that keep coming in, so we're pretty excited about it. Both of us are going to be teaching in several places, and so we'll be gone about 5 weeks. And so during that time, I'm going to show you, I had several ladies got together and said, why don't we get a book? So I've ordered this book for a few people who are going to teach. If you'd like to have a copy of this book, they're like $20, $25. They are not, depending on where you get them, they are not cheap. It's like $20 with shipping or $25 without shipping. So if you want one, let me know, but I think you're going to have to pay for it yourself, but you don't have to have one. So several of the ladies are going to teach the lessons out of it in the fall quarter when we take off. And I'll be back when I get back from my trip. I guess I should turn this